Welcome to the Campervan channel, the YouTube channel for all things VW camper. We cover campervans based on all types of Volkswagen Transporter, but in this video I'm shining the spotlight on the third generation, the T3, the T25 or the Vanagon. I'll come on to all those different names in a bit. But whatever you call it, it's what many campervan fans consider the last and possibly the quirkiest of the classic Volkswagen Transporters. By 1979, VW had built over 2 million T2 bay window hippie van transporters, many converted into much loved campervans. And while versions of the T2 would roll off assembly lines in Mexico and then Brazil for another 33 years, in Europe it was time for a change. And what a change! When the first T3 was produced in May 1979, it's fair to say it was a bit of a shock. After the classic curves of the T1 Splitties and the T2 bay windows, the T3's hard-edged angular lines took some getting used to. Of course, the purists hated it. Its sheer squareness and all those straight lines led to some very rude names. Wedge, brick, breeze block. Very unfair on breeze blocks. Only joking. This was the sharp new style that would drive the Transporter through the 80s and beyond. The new T3 shared the family DNA, an upfront, forward controlled driving position, a huge amount of cargo space between the axles and a rear-mounted engine, and somewhat unexpectedly an air-cooled engine at that. Yes, the shiny new Transporter for the 80s had an engine that could be traced back to the original Beetle in the 1940s. Before I go any further, let's get this name business sorted out. In the UK, we tend to call it the T3 because it's the third generation of the Transporter, which follows the T2, makes sense. But sometimes it's called the T25, which isn't quite right. Volkswagen officially refer to this model as the Type 25. And if you're watching this in the United States, none of this will make any sense whatsoever, because you'll know it as the Vanagon, apparently because it's a cross between a van and a station wagon. I'll stick to T3 to keep it simple. The first ones from 1980 were somewhat underpowered by their 1.6 or 2 litre air-cooled engines. You can easily spot these because first, they have a blank panel immediately above the front bumper, and second, they'll probably be travelling very slowly. 1981 saw the introduction of a 1.6 litre water-cooled diesel option, a unit previously used in the VW Golf, and by the end of the year, water-cooled petrol engines finally arrived on the Transporter. Hallelujah! But it was another year before the air-cooled engines finally spluttered out of existence on German-built Transporters. They could no longer meet the emissions standards of a lot of the markets where the T3 was being sold. 1985 saw a full revamp of the model. It's claimed there were over 1,000 individual modifications. Who knows if that's true, but petrols got catalytic converters, diesels got turbochargers, and there was a really big breakthrough, the all-wheel drive Syncro. VW had dabbled with four-wheel drive during the Second World War. Then the concept was revised in the late 70s by a chap called Henning Duckstein, who worked in the R&D department at VW. He was a keen off-roader and fitted an all-wheel drive system to his bay window campervan, as you do. With hardly any funding, Duckstein and some of his colleagues managed to build 5 prototype 4x4 T2 buses. These did really well on the testing grounds, as these great photos from Volkswagen's archives show. Back then, the company felt there wasn't a market for the four-wheel drive concept. It was 1983 before they started working on it again, and 2 years later, the first Syncro T3 four-wheel drive Transporter went on sale. There were 2 different versions of the Syncro. one with 14-inch wheels and a much beefier version with 16-inch wheels, stronger drive shafts, more powerful brakes and a reinforced chassis. It seems VW were hoping the military would place orders. But they were expensive to produce and sales didn't climb as well as the vehicles did. Here in the UK, a Syncro would cost you about £4,000 more than the two-wheel drive version. Not so desirable then, but these rare beasts certainly are now. There was more groundbreaking in 1985 when the T3 was used for a whole new concept, the Multivan. VW had clocked that families and outdoor types had increasingly been using their T3s as all-round family vehicles, not just load carriers for business. So they came up with a kind of halfway house between a people carrier and a camper van. In the back, the Multivan had seats on either side and a folding table, creating a kind of lounge on wheels, a cool box and a trademark bench seat that could be folded out into a bed. Special editions of the T3 Multivan helped give it cult status and turned what had once been dismissed as an ugly duckling into a van that could be sporty, exclusive and cool. Cool maybe, but the T3s never stopped being just a little bit quirky. It seems something definitely had gone off a bit in VW's where shall we put things department. The fuel tank is usually under the driver and passenger seat. Interesting. Where would you go to refill the washer bottle? Under the mats in the passenger footwell, of course. Topping up the brake fluid actually involves removing the top of the instrument panel in the cab. Seriously. And if you just cannot find out where to top up the oil, where's the last place you'd look? Under a flap behind the rear number plate, stupid. Quirks and all, the T3 proved hugely popular with independent campervan converters, including Devon, Remo, Danbury, Holdsworth and Autosleeper. In 1988, VW and its close partner Westfalia jointly developed a special model campervan based on the existing Joker camper, and they named it the California. So yes, these T3s were the first Californias. Influenced, officially endorsed and sold by Volkswagen, but not converted by them. VW's in-house Californias didn't arrive until 2003 when it adapted the T5, but that's another story and another video. The original T3 California was an instant success, selling 5,000 units in the first year, helped by the fact that it cost a fifth less than the Joker. It had the basic layout and many of the features that you'd recognise in the latest T6.1 based Californias today. Insulated double glazing, a pop-top roof, and inside a smart grey interior, individual swivel seats for driver and passenger, and the folding seat bench that becomes a bed. The driver's side is dedicated to the kitchen, where there's a fridge which runs on gas or electric, a 2-burner gas cooker, in fact there's everything, including the kitchen sink. Hidden away, there's a separate leisure battery and tanks for fresh and waste water. Apparently VW has no official record of how the California name was chosen, but at first it only applied to the special model. Westfalia produced a more luxurious camper called the Atlantic at the same time. But it was the California name that stuck and became the family name for a whole series of top-end, well-equipped campers that we know so well today. The T3 California came along just 3 years before the end of the model's main production run, yet they managed to make 22,000 of them before the Hanover factory finally stopped making the T3 in 1990. But it wasn't quite the end of the road. Syncro continued to be built in Austria for a couple of years, and South Africa built a version for another 12 years. All these years later, the T3's original detractors have been drowned out by an army of fans who've given it cult status. The model certainly played a huge part in the development of the Transporter. It introduced the Multivan concept and the California name. It was the first Transporter to offer diesel engines and four-wheel drive. So I hope that's given you an overview of the T3, Vanagon or Type 25. Keep a lookout for our buying guide to the model and our video on what they're like to live with long term. Great though they are, they do need a lot of TLC. That's all I'm saying. Please subscribe, click on that bell icon and you'll hear when every video goes online. For now, thanks for watching.